mental health in relationships.
Yeah. And what's the problem? Why can't you admit there's a problem? What's the problem in admitting there's a problem?
So it's okay to say, I'm not okay.
Yes.
Because
then I'm sure after this broadcast, some friends will say, oh, so this guy went. Yeah, I did.
We have to learn to be able to allow that talking to go. So you're
more tolerant of those that I could be flippant to us.
She's almost like, if you are talking about it, you're admitting that there's a problem. That's fair. At his age.
I'm not that old. Part 2, we did say we were going to have a part 2
of mental health in relationships.
Yeah. And this time, let's hone in how mental health affects those in serious relationships. For instance, my wife she's an advocate of mental health. She's really hot on it. So she was into it even before I got into it. So she recognized she's more tolerant. I think that's the word. More tolerant of those that I could be flippant to us, or I could say, come on, man it up or whatever. But she had always been more tolerant. And
she's more intuitive. Generally, that's a trait we women have.
Yeah.
Intuition.
Yes. More intuitive. How did she pass that knowledge on to me? By just breaking it down, discussing it, and breaking it down.
And that's already the first thing. Yeah. Mental health is a taboo in some families and relationships. It's almost like, if you are talking about it, you're admitting that there's a problem.
And what's the problem? Why can't you admit there's a problem? What's the problem in admitting there's a problem?
And that's the taboo. That's why we're talking about it, because it's in relationships. And, they'll say there's somebody in that family, they have madness in that family, don't go there. Some people, that's part of their checks. Is there any madness in the family? That's what they used to call it. I'm just being real. Yeah, that's what they call it, madness. I mean, we're calling it mental well-being.
Mental well-being.
And meaning that we're all on the spectrum. How well are you mentally? So those who are over let's just call it out of a scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah.
What's your mental well-being at that time? And how did your wife educate
And it fluctuates. It fluctuates. There are times when I could be into myself, and when I say into myself, I just withdraw and keep quiet. And because I'm the bubbly type, I'm the it's noticeable.
Yes.
When I withdraw, and and that's because I'm either thinking about certain things or hardly now, but I mean it does come when things disturb me. Things I can't control, I just don't let it.
And it's developing a environment where it's okay to talk. Even in the place of work. Sometimes I'll just be talking. I've got work to do. But the thing that is bothering me, fortunately, I in my place of work, we've created an environment where people can talk.
Yes.
If they want to talk, they can talk. And, we have to learn to be able to allow that talking to go. So you were saying, so your wife broke out the relationship in such a way, the conversation in such a way to bring it up.
Yeah. So I then I started to understand, and then bit by bit, the penny dropped. That this mental health is real, and that's my statement now. Mental health is real. There was something I experienced many years ago. Whilst I was in Nigeria, relocated to Nigeria, promises, had everything.
So you went for a contract with lots of promises.
Yes, lots of promises.
Yes.
Well, it didn't turn out as promised. Went with family.
Wow.
So family came back, and I felt I needed to make it work.
Okay, so your family came back and you stayed behind.
And I stayed back. And there was a particular day, I can remember that day vividly. I was alone at home. And I do not know what happened, but it was a nanosecond thought. And I'm emphasizing nanosecond thought because, we all have thoughts. God knows how many thoughts we have
in a day.
But the thoughts that you hold on to are thoughts that, you've sifted those thoughts and you say, you know what, I'm going to focus on this thought. And then you begin to dress up the thought before the thought
develops a life of his
own.
Yes.
This podcast started with a thought, So I had this nanosecond thought of suicide.
Okay. Suicide as in committing suicide.
It was just, not me committing suicide, but it was suicide.
Okay.
It just...
And what do you think brought that thought?
It was the pressure of life. The pressure of life.
So you were under pressure.
Oh, seriously under pressure.
If you had entertained that thought, where do you think it would have gone?
It'll be more prominent. I'm not saying that I would.
So you may have felt even more down.
I would have felt more down.
You've just said your family has gone back because things were not working out. You were alone.
Yes. So it was as I said, a nanosecond thought. And they say men don't talk and whatever. And again, Nigerian, British Nigerian.
Yeah, British enough. Well done. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
because we need to hear this, BabaShola. We really do.
And then I'm sure after this broadcast, some friends will say, so this guy went. Yeah, I did. I did. And mental health is real. I went through hell at one point in time. So how did I get out of it? Well, because I'm a Christ follower, I prayed immediately. But you know what that did for me? It made me become more empathetic.
Yes.
Because at that moment, after praying, at that moment, I could now appreciate.
And what did you pray? Because there'll be people there that'll be thinking, so how do you pray when you're down?
I just, at that point in time, prayer is actually communicating with who you believe in, with God. I believe in God through Jesus Christ. That's prayer. Okay. I'm talking to you, and that's how I spoke to God. I don't see God, but God sees me, So I just said, God, I don't know why that thought came, but take control. I do not want to think about it ever. It's something on my own. I will not condone or do. However, the thought came for a purpose. That thought, I can't even remember, it's over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. That thought, now me telling the story about that thought, recording it, sending it out there, could be for one person.
Yes. And funny you say about thoughts, because when I was talking about when I couldn't move, I was just stagnant, and at that point I just knew I was depressed, and that depression just made me down, and I knew I was depressed. And how did I get out of the depression? Because these are ways of kind of thinking about our mental well-being. I realized that I had to change my environment, because I was in the place just like yourself where I was going through a separation. In fact, I was separated at that point. I was homeless. I was living with friends at that point. And I realized that, wow, I need to do something radical. And I actually remember going to my pastor at the time and telling him that I need a change of environment. I need to leave this country. I need to go somewhere. And that change of environment was the beginning of my recovery.
You came to terms with it.
Yes, I had to realize first I'm depressed. So it's okay to say I'm not okay.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things that we're also not encouraged to do. It's like, even if you're a person of faith like us, where you believe Jesus, God can take care of it, you still have to come to a point of saying, I am not okay.
Because I believe in Jesus Christ does not mean that I don't have issues to combat or issues to deal with. I'm not religious in any way. When I say Jesus, does not mean that I'm religious. I just believe in Jesus. I'm not a religious person.
Yes. And
They're two different things.
Sometimes as well is another reason why people don't speak up. Because when you're religious, you say, no, how can you say you've got mental health? Are you not a...
What's that popular phrase? It is well.
It is well.
I never use that phrase, it is well. Every small thing, you are ill.
Mm-hmm. But it's coming from a place of, making your confessions to be in the direction of where you see yourself. That's where that comes from. So let's deal with that. Because, BabaShola, I can see your eye now.
Yeah. But now it's been overflowed to the point that it's become meaningless. When you are obviously suffering and, there are destiny helpers around you, and all they could hear is, it is well.
Yeah.
Voice out your issue.
It's a little bit like somebody coming to you and saying,
how can I help you?
I need food, I need clothing, and then you say it is well. We have to address these issues. I mean, that's very powerful what you have shared, that you actually had a suicidal thought, and many people do. But some people can't talk about it and then act on it. And then people around them will be saying, oh, we noticed that he wasn't, Some people will hide it very well. But if somebody wants to commit suicide, it's a cry for help.
It is.
And if somebody ever says to you, oh, I'm not feeling well, I'm not feeling okay, I'm learning that myself. I remember my son would tell me, sometimes he would used to say, Mom, and I would just say, get over yourself. But I'm learning not to be like that. Because you have to, and he's a young man. The things that young people are going through right now is that they could be bullied online. Social media now, you are comparing yourself to people who are not realistic. Even some of the image they're projecting is not for real. And this is why we're doing this. And I try and be as real as possible, because I want people to learn that it's not everything that people are projecting is real. So if you're comparing yourself to somebody online, even that person, I heard of one very successful person online that committed suicide. And you're like, these are people that millions of followers are following. And they committed suicide. The pressure, trying to keep up with what the facade that they have created. Yeah. So be in your own lane. That's one of the things in relationships I always say. My husband and I always say, we're not the same, we're very different. But we support each other to be the best version of ourselves. Yeah. He's not like me. Me, I'm very hyper. And that's one of the traits that is in my family that lends itself to mental unwellness. Not enough sleep, too much working, and overachievers. You have degree, doctorates, this and that, and you are still studying. Nothing wrong with that.
However,
you need a balance.
You need to balance, yeah.
And then I realized that there were these traits in my family. So when I had that depression and mental breakdown, I went to South Africa. Fortunately for me, I had a friend that was willing to put me up. I didn't go to Nigeria because that's where my family, most of my family, and they could not deal with my down. Because they've always known me. I'm a firstborn. I don't know about you, but I'm a firstborn. And if you're coming from the kind of background we're coming from, there's a lot of expectations on firstborns. And that expectation is such that sometimes when you are going through a downtime, people don't want to understand. They want what they want from you, and that's the end of it. So I remember when I was in South Africa, I still used to get phone calls from back in Nigeria about people's problems. And one of my aunties, she's gone to be with the Lord, may her soul rest in peace, said, why are you calling her? Give her a break. She's not okay. And I will be forever grateful for that I had that space. And what did I do as part of my mental well-being? I love to juice. I juiced. I didn't have no family worry again because my son was with his dad at that point in time. I was homeless anyway. I did juicing. She had a car, X5. You know, she was one of these
high flyers.
High flyers, thank you. Although that's also a challenge, but at that point in time, don't be so high flying that you fly off the handle. Because those are part of the traits. And this friend of mine also suffered bouts of mental well-being. And so we used to pray together. I used to encourage her, be careful, my friend. This high flying is too much. But anyway, I enjoyed the X5. Because in South Africa, they drive on the same side of the road as the United Kingdom. So your well-being is important. The work-life balance is important. Being able to talk to people about it. Not anybody, because, you know, not every family member can understand. It's okay to go and talk to people who don't know you about it. That's not a problem, is it? Because there's no judgment.
It isn't.
Yes.
And I just want to chip in by saying that this well-being fluctuates every day. There are days when you can be up, there are days when you can be low. And you just have to recognize that and recognize the other person, recognize your partner, recognize your husband, your wife, your colleague, that, okay, you know, just give that person the space rather than not appreciate, you know, what the person may be going through.
Yeah. And in a work environment, especially, because that's where a lot of toxic relationships often take place.
And that is where we spend most of our time.
We spend a good portion. How do you deal with somebody that's exhibiting characters that is looking like they're not fully themselves? How do you handle that?
How do I handle that? I listen more. I try to get the person to talk, and then I offer myself as an example on how personally, I'm not a formal person. I don't like formal. I always like to break it down to, you know, this is my example. This is how I deal with things, so that the other person can. I try to connect.
Yes, and that's a very good way. Thank you for sharing that, because as soon as people know that you have been through something like that, automatically they feel like you can relate.
Yeah.
So I also try and use myself as an example a lot, and we have to stop this thing that we do in some of our families where we keep everything is secret.
Yeah.
Why? This is one of the reasons why we're doing this, BabaShola, so that people can, those things that used to be taboo in your family, we're speaking it. I often say, you know, I say now, I've made myself of no reputation. So if there's anything that is not good to talk, I've spoken it already. And I will continue to speak it. Because I don't want anybody to use anything against me anyway.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what is there left? I know divorce used to be a taboo. I've been divorced. Mental health is a taboo. I've had mental health. What else is a taboo?
And what are really taboos?
Taboos are things that people find difficult to talk about because there's a perception that is frowned upon. And mental health is one of those things, especially within certain cultures. That's why we hide people now, lunatics, we call them. Back in the day, you hide them. If you have a brother or a sister or a family member that has maybe a persistent mental health situation, they are banished, are they not? They are sent away. They go to a hospital, mental health hospitals. Is that not why we have mental health hospitals, where they're medicated and they're looked after in a different way, rather than assimilate them in some way? Okay, we appreciate that there are some mental well-being health situation that needs medicating, you know, and our lifestyle contributes as well.
It does.
So if you are into some kind of recreational drugs, some of those recreational drugs heighten your tendency to become more, you start seeing things and all those things.
I mean, I've changed my diet, I've changed my lifestyle, and it was intentional. I just had to get to the point where, you know what, let me just take care of myself. Health is wealth. You know, I do a lot of walking now. I eat a lot of fruits. I actually search for the equivalent, the medical, if there's for instance, why do you get tired easily? Or we're in the season of hay fever. What fruits are good for antihistamines or equivalent to antihistamines?
Yes.
And I take those fruits. I do not eat late anymore.
That's good, and I've noticed the difference. Look at how you have grown. Can you believe? Look at BabaShola's face. If it was not, he even has hair at his age.
I'm not that old.
You know why I said that? Because he's white, and that stands for wisdom. But to belabor the point what he's making, you have to make deliberate and intentional changes.
Intentional,
And like you, I'm the same. Ever since I've had that mental breakdown and that meltdown, my life is just so different. I don't take myself too seriously anymore. I've had members of my family that have had mental health, at least even my own mom, she did. And I remember when, she had some medication she used to take. And, my mom, bless her heart, she would pray over that medication before she took them so that they would work accordingly. So my grandmother died early. Hypertension, I have it in my family. So now I'm the only one that doesn't have high blood pressure. But it was from being deliberate because I saw the trajectory of my life was going in the same direction. I had the same traits like most of the women in my family. Overachievers, overworking, not having enough sleep.
Sleeping late.
Hyper. My husband is now the total opposite to me. Sometimes I'm envying him that he will just sit there be relaxing. I said, my baby, don't you have his things to do? I said, then I'll catch myself. Leave him.
Yeah.
That's how he
Yes. Yeah.
My husband can chillax forever. He loves his own company. And even when we want to go out, I've shared before, it's a battle. I say, why do we have to go? Are you Nigerian? Everything you call color, tell us what we have to wear and all of that. And I'll be saying, if we don't have the colors they're asking, let us sit ourselves up. Because I'm not showing up there in the way they don't want. He said, what's the matter with you guys? But what am I saying? I don't despise people who are very chilled anymore.
Very accommodating.
Yes. So in a relationship, value the things that your partner does that might not be like you. As long as he's helping to preserve their well-being. Maybe you could learn something from them.
Definitely.
And, I had a situation where someone would say to somebody, you are not ambitious. What is ambition? Is it ambition that's going to kill you? How many people do we know, BabaShola? They've reached the pinnacle of their career.
Yeah.
They've retired.
Yeah.
And guess what happened to them?
That was it. Downhill.
They passed away. Yeah. Because they didn't look after their health on their way to their high-flying achievement.
Yeah. So what are we saying? Just be intentional. Mental health is real.
It's real.
Even with your children as well. Just be accommodating, study them. Do not, from where we come from, Nigeria, we tend to compare,
one child to another. Or one child to other people's children.
Oh, look at what, my friend's daughter or whatever, or my friend's daughter is getting married or has already gotten married. I'm already a grandfather or a grandma. Come on.
That's very common. And stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
Your child might have achieved their degree at the age of 7. We often see on social media, oh, that 7-year-old genius, that 3-year-old genius.
That is just 10% of the story.
That's just 10% of the story. That's a child. By the time that child gets to teenager, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So let's be intentional about supporting one another with our mental well-being. Today, I might be well.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, if I'm not feeling well, accommodate me. Let's hear what is on your heart. let's hear your thoughts on this very, very important but necessary subject. We have our physical health, we have our mental health, we have our spiritual health.
Yeah.
All of them needs attention. But I think the mental one is very much impact. So whatever works for you, it could be your diet. Yes, diet has an impact on your mental. It could be the job that you're doing. If you don't like your job, I'm a big advocate of get out of it. Money is not everything. Trust me. If money was everything, it will fix everything. We won't have any rich, mad people, like we say. We wouldn't have rich people who have mental well-being issues. So,
okay. Very well said. Very well said.
Thank you, BabaShola, for sharing as well.
Yeah.
It was so personal.
Yeah.
And it's really good to hear it from a man's perspective. Thank you for sharing.
We hope to hear from you.
Yes.
Remember to subscribe if you haven't. Let's have your comments and please do share. Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
See you.